on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Supreme Court decides. Speaker informs Parliament that Supreme Court deemed 2/3 parliamentary approval and referendum needed for the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Trump's war cry.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
Finally on the witness stand. Former Governor of the Central Bank Arjuna Mahendran gives evidence before the Bond Commission. No fear. Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi is unafraid of international scrutiny. Filling the void. Sri Lanka cricket announces new panel of selectors. Bring you news from home and across the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7. Good evening, I'm Katharina Chang. On to your top story tonight, the general debate of the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly got underway today at the UN headquarters in New York. President Maithripala Sirisena will address the Assembly at around 5 p.m. Eastern Time and will elaborate on a variety of topics including consensual politics as well as reconciliation and peace. Meanwhile, today in a bellicose address, US President Donald Trump had fiery words for North Korea threatening annihilation.
UN officials and world leaders participated in the general debate of the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly, which was held under the theme focusing on people, striving for peace and a decent life for all on a sustainable planet.
It is not enough to fight terrorists on the battlefield or to deny them funds. We must do more to address the roots of radicalization, including real and perceived injustices and high levels of unemployment and grievance among young people. Political, religious and community leaders have a duty to stand up against hatred and serve as models of tolerance and moderation. But experience has also shown that harsh crackdowns and heavy-handed approaches are counterproductive.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump's North Korea rhetoric reached new heights.
If the righteous many do not confront the wicked few, then evil will triumph. No one has shown more contempt for other nations and for the well-being of their own people than the depraved regime in North Korea. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
Meanwhile, the sessions of the UN Economic and Social Council commenced yesterday, attended by heads of state including President Maithripala Sirisena. During the meeting, US President Donald Trump said the UN is not living up to its potential due to bureaucracy and mismanagement.
While the United Nations on a regular budget has increased by 140% and its staff has more than doubled since 2000, we are not seeing the results in line with this investment. We commend the Secretary General and his call for the United Nations to focus more on people and less on bureaucracy. We must ensure that no one and no member state shoulders a disproportionate share of the burden, and that's militarily or financially.
In response, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was in agreement, calling on the UN to be flexible and efficient.
Together, we are making progress on a broad and bold reform agenda to strengthen the United Nations. Our shared objective is a 21st century UN focused more on people, less on process, and as you rightly said, more on delivery, less on bureaucracy.
Now, today was a busy day in Parliament with the Speaker announcing the Supreme Court's decision on the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. The Supreme Court decided that certain clauses of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution are unconstitutional. Announcing the ruling of the Supreme Court to the Parliament, Speaker Karu Jayasuriya said the Supreme Court informed that it would be approved by a referendum and a two-thirds majority in Parliament.
I wish to announce to the House that I have received the determination of the Supreme Court in respect of the bill titled 20th Amendment to the Constitution, which has been challenged in the Supreme Court in terms of Article 121(1) of the Constitution. The majority of the court has determined that clauses 2, 3 and 4 of the bill is inconsistent with Article 3, 4, 12(1) and 14(1) of the Constitution, and under Article 83, the bill shall become law if the number of votes cast in favour thereof amounts to not less than two-thirds of the whole number of members, including those not present, approved by the people at a referendum, and a certificate is endorsed thereon by the President in accordance with Article 80.
In the meantime, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe stated in the Parliament that the decision taken by the leaders of the political parties to hold elections in January next year was informed to the Election Commission.
Neither the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, led by President Maithripala Sirisena, nor the United National Party want to postpone elections. The new election system is approved by the Parliament. Therefore, I would like to state that the election will be held in January. There are 3 provincial councils that will be dissolved in October. Election Commissioner says the election will be held by the 9th of December. We want to know if it will be held for sure. According to what we agreed so far, the last vote for the budget will be held on the 9th of December. We will have to decide if the budget vote will be held before that, after that, or if we have to go for a vote on account. This date was not decided by me. If needed, I'll discuss the matter with party leaders again next week after the Election Commission informs me. Although they say the Provincial Council election will be held in January, the Urban Council Ordinance, the Municipal Council Ordinance and the Pradesha Sabha Act, as well as the Gazette notification to establish Pradesha Sabha and municipal councils, should be approved, but dates for the relevant debates are not yet fixed in Parliament. Provincial Council elections can't be held without amending those. The government should state when they will be tabled.
In the meantime, people around the country celebrated the Supreme Court ruling over the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Meanwhile, the 20th Amendment to the Constitution passed in Central Provincial Council. The amendment passed with 40 votes in favour and 9 against it. Meanwhile, Arundika Fernando, who was removed from his ministerial portfolio by the President recently, crossed over and sat with the opposition in Parliament during today's session. He crossed over after making a special statement.
We saw how capitalists centred in Colombo drove this government towards destruction. When a large amount of money is lost to the country because of the bond issue, and when fraud keep happening, and the economy collapses since there isn't a proper plan, I grew disappointment. We talked in the party. We didn't go to the meeting of the governing party after the first one because we were insulted. Then we started holding discussions within our party. But at the end, I lost my ministerial post when I conveyed all this to the public. I decide today to launch my battle to topple this government.
In the meantime, visuals of the parliamentarians of the opposition welcomed him when he crossed over were posted on social media. Former Minister of Foreign Affairs Professor G.L. Piri says that the government is using every trick possible to delay elections. Speaking at a media briefing in Colombo today, the minister said that the government is aware that they will lose the upcoming election. He added that the joint opposition is prepared to take further legal action to hasten elections.
Why didn't the government do anything when they were in power for the past 2 years? After the Supreme Court issued an order to hold elections, the government is now tabling a proposal to establish an electoral system at provincial council elections as well. Then they came up with a proposal to carry out a delimitation process. Legally, this cannot be done. During the parliamentary committee phase, amendments can be tabled within the framework of the Act. If they want to change the Act as a whole, then it has to be gazetted. That is exactly what they're trying to do. This is not an amended Act.
Meanwhile, a group of MPs from the joint opposition met with the chairman of the Election Commission this evening.
In line with the Supreme Court ruling, if the government wishes to postpone elections, they have to obtain a two-thirds majority from the parliament and hold a referendum. The government is aiming to table this act in parliament and try to include amendments that are not even mentioned in this draft bill during the working committee stage, which will further delay the elections. We're against this preferential system, but they are making this draft bill an excuse. Therefore, we request the Attorney General and his department to prevent this from happening. We also wish to tell the Speaker that if he allows such an act to pass in Parliament, then this will be the end of the Parliament.
The strike launched by the trade unions of the Ceylon Electricity Board continued for the 7th day today. In the meantime, power breakdowns are reported from several areas of the country, along with disgruntled members of the public.
The Joint Trade Union Alliance declared the strike, demanding electricity tariffs be reduced by recovering the losses incurred by corrupt officials within the CEB. Accordingly, a discussion was held after 5 days between trade unions involved in the strike and the Minister of Labour and Trade Union Relations, WDJ Senavaratna, yesterday.
The mediation of the Minister of Labour is commendable. We will stop this strike if we get a circular with all our suggestions without omitting any. We came to certain conclusions during the discussions. We will announce them in a while. We hope they will work accordingly.
With the strike entering a 7th day, disruptions to the electricity supply were reported in several areas of the country, while people in some areas staged protests.
In the meantime, the Alliance of Railway Operations Supervisory Officers Union, which includes station masters, train drivers and railway guards, will launch a strike from midnight tomorrow. We will join you with more local news on the other side.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back to the news. Former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran appeared as a witness for the first time before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the central bank bond issuances today. He responded to questions on various critical areas where his involvement as the central bank governor was criticised and came under much media scrutiny over the past 1.5 years.
President's counsel Ramesh De Silva, representing the former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran, made an application to the Commission that his client be treated respectfully during the sessions. He went on to emphasise that Mahendran is a Singaporean national and therefore not obliged to appear before the Commission. De Silva also said that if his client was to be treated disrespectfully, Mahendran will withdraw from giving further testimonies. President Counsel Ramesh De Silva then commenced the questioning session, focusing on several areas that came under scrutiny after testimonies of other 50 witnesses. Answering the line of questioning, Mahendran first emphasised the economical challenges the country faced at the time he was appointed the governor of the central bank, as per the invitation of newly established government in early 2015. He said the country was facing a severe debt burden at the time and that drastic changes were needed to rectify the situation. He explained that in a backdrop where 90% of the country's revenue went towards paying off debt, it was necessary to bring in private sector money into the market. Mahendran went on to say that a more public-friendly market was needed to achieve that and highlighted it as a cause for backing public auction as a more preferable method to issue treasury bonds as compared to the private placement method. President Council Ramesh De Silva then focused on the controversial Treasury bond auction held on the 27th of February 2015 and alleged losses incurred. Mahendran explained his decision to accept Treasury bond auction bids worth 10 billion rupees on a higher yield rate of 11.73%. He said there was a government monetary requirement of 13.55 billion rupees to be fulfilled by the 2nd of March 2015, along with another 175 billion rupee monetary requirement for the month of March that year and 75 billion rupees for stagnant road development projects. Mahendran said he was surprised when Public Debt Department announced only 1 billion rupees worth of bids for the 27th of February bond auction when the government needed such a large amount of borrowings. He then said it was in this backdrop that he suggested the tender board to raise bids up to 10 billion rupees. He, however, emphasized he did not pressurize the tender board to do so, as the board is an independent entity within the central bank. On alleged losses incurred after the auction, Mahendran said Auditor General made a glaring mistake in his calculations. He explained the three main assumptions by the Auditor General are not applicable for the particular situation. Mahendran said the main assumption where required funds could have been raised by bids worth 10 billion rupees at the same interest rate used for bids worth 1 billion rupees resulted in grave miscalculations. He then answered questions on the controversial restructuring process of the central bank following his appointment. Mahendran said he restructured the central bank by dividing its departments into 3 clusters in a bid to tackle the country's prevalent economical challenges. Accordingly, clusters named Policy Advisory, Financial Regulation and Development and Capacity Building were put under the 3 Deputy Governors Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, P. Samarasiri and Anand Silva respectively. He stressed that he initiated many internal transfers solely owing to the restructuring process. The former central bank governor then went on to comment on his relationship with the former director of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Arjun Aloysius. He said his daughter's wedding in 2012 was attended by prominent political figures such as Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, all 3 sons of the former president Mahinda Rajapaksa, former Minister Ravi Karunanayake, as well as Minister Sagala Ratnayake and many more. He said the relationship between Aloysius and himself was therefore a well-known fact in political as well as business arenas even before he was invited to take up the position of the central bank governor.
Another phase of an arms collection, also known as Pindapata, to raise funds for fines imposed on former President's Secretary Lalit Veeratunga and former Director of the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, Anusha Palpita, who were convicted over the silk clothes case, took place in Kiribathgora today. A tense situation erupted when a group attempted to put meat-based food items into the alms bowls of the Buddhist monks.
Representatives from the joint opposition, MP Sisira Jayakodi and Prasanna Ranavira, were handed enjoining orders by Mahara Magistrate Court prior to the commencement of the arms collection. The enjoining orders stated that collection of arms be carried out in a peaceful manner. The collection was worked off under the auspices of Chancellor of the Sabaragamu University, Venerable Professor Kamburugamuwe Vajrathera. A tense situation erupted close to the Kiribathgora town when police attempted to stop a group from offering meat-based food to the Buddhist clergy. However, the group ignored orders from police and continued to provide food for the monks. Following the incident, another argument erupted between the group accompanying the Buddhist clergy and those who provided arms.
Now the police are handing out court orders against collection of arms. The government is falling apart and the police are acting unprofessionally. We do not need anybody's permission to engage in arms collection. This is a Buddhist country. We can go anywhere we like with our alms bowls. We are not doing this against anyone. This is not for politics. This is done for a good cause.
The government has decided to postpone the parliamentary debate on the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance draft bill, which was scheduled for Thursday. Government ministers convened a meeting chaired by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe last night at Temple Trees, where the draft bill was reportedly discussed at length. Meanwhile, convening a media briefing today, the organisation Mahajana Rajya Sabha called on the government to avoid taking up the draft bill in Parliament at all.
This bill is not taken up in Parliament purely to stamp out any possible opposition. We still hope that the President will not bring the bill for debate in Parliament at all and will not get it passed. Members of Parliament, you must answer to the people, not the party leader. You should not act according to the order that comes from above. Do not raise your hand to allow the country's sovereignty to be infringed. I clearly state that this is being done to begin the process of punishing our war heroes for alleged war crimes, even though they would give their lives to protect the country.
The FM Derana implemented the third phase of the pilgrimage program FM Derana Dambadiva Vandana with the departure of 90 devotees to India this morning.
90 devotees were selected from the listeners of FM Derana programs Dam Saknada and Dahami Derana to participate in this phase of FM Derana Dambadiva Vandana program. Devotees will be given the opportunity to join an all-expenses-paid 14-day pilgrimage to visit Buddhist sacred sites in India. Meanwhile, another phase of the environmental project to plant 1 million trees was worked off by the Nature Force of Manusat Derana today. The inaugural ceremony of the project was held at the Dr. Kulasinghe Mahavidyalaya in Udammita, Negombo, with the partnership of officials of the Negombo Education Zone and City Gardens organization. The program was conducted in 117 schools in the areas of Katana, Ja'ala and Negombo Education Zone with the objective of combating environmental concerns.
Following the death of a suspect detained at the Pittigala police station, IGP Pooja Jayasundara declared that stern action will be taken against the police officers on duty at the station. Police headquarters said that the cause of his death is suspected to be suicide. Let's now take a look at some of the stories making news across Sri Lanka.
The Customs Narcotic Control Unit of the Bandaranaike International Airport apprehended a 51-year-old Sri Lankan who was attempting to smuggle a stash of precious metals into the country. A stock of palladium valued at 1.4 million rupees and 5 grams of gold sovereigns were found hidden within the luggage of the suspect who had arrived from Hong Kong this morning. A 21-year-old youth was killed yesterday when the three-wheeler he was travelling in collided with a train engine bound from Anuradhapura to Colombo. The accident occurred at an unguarded level crossing in Savastipura in the Anuradhapura district. Wildlife officials and area residents rescued 4 elephants from an irrigation well in Horopatana. The 2 cow elephants and 2 calves rescued from the well last night were subsequently released into the Karanagaswava Teak Reserve.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Other Derana 24/7.
The US stresses that there shall be no major change in its trade policy towards Sri Lanka in the aftermath of its new administration. Furthermore, it hinted on strong economic relations in the future based on the bedrock US-Sri Lanka Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, also known as TIFA, inked in Washington in 2002, to which Sri Lanka consented readily yesterday. Assistant US Trade Representative Mark Linscott met Sri Lanka Minister of Industry and Commerce team, led by its Secretary Chintaka Lokuhetty on behalf of Subject Minister Rishad Baduddin in Colombo. In the meeting visiting new Assistant US Trade Representative South and Central Asian Affairs Office, Mark Linscott said, quote, "It is tough to predict the future," unquote, and that the new US administration had a significant shift in change towards several of its trade agreements, mainly in Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. He also said that there is a big focus on renegotiating NAFTA. Today, Sri Lankan shares gained for the 4th straight session today to mark a 4-week closing high on foreign buying in blue chips. Foreign investors bought a net 129.9 million rupees worth of shares today, extending the year-to-date net foreign inflow to 7.1 billion rupees. We'll now cross over to RM Sivananda from the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Well, the S&P Sri Lanka 20 index gained 8.83 points to close at 3,692.52. The market capitalization at the end of the day was 2,915.07 billion rupees. Today's foreign purchases was 985.08 million rupees and the foreign sales was 855.18 million rupees.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Myanmar's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi does not fear international scrutiny of the government's handling of the growing Rohingya crisis. She made the assertion during her first national address on the violence, adding that she was making the address as she was unable to travel to the UN General Assembly this week.
Violence in Myanmar's northern Rakhine state has forced more than 400,000 Rohingya Muslims into neighbouring Bangladesh. Myanmar's state councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, who has faced heavy criticism for her response to the Rohingya crisis, says her government is making every effort to restore peace and stability.
As a responsible member of the community of nations, Myanmar does not fear international scrutiny. There have been allegations and counter-allegations, and we have to make sure that these allegations are based on solid evidence before we take action.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
The new panel of selectors of the Sri Lanka cricket was announced today, with the Graham Labroy set to chair the panel. The new panel was ratified by the Minister of Sports, Sri Lanka.
The new panel of selectors will be headed by Graham Labroy and includes members Gamini Wickramasinghe, Gerald Waters, Sajid Fernando and Asanka Gurusinghe. The term of the new selectors will commence with the selection of the first test squad to take on Pakistan in their tour of UAE next week. The national team is due to depart Colombo on Sunday the 24th of this month for 2 tests, 5 ODIs and 3 T20s against Pakistan, which will be played across the UAE, with the final T20 scheduled to be played in the Pakistani city of Lahore. It will mark the first occasion of the Sri Lankan cricket team returning to Pakistan following the terror attack on them in 2009.
Let's now cross over to Dhammik Ekanayake at the Other Derana Weather Centre for your weather forecast for the next 24 hours.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now we can expect temperatures to vary between 20 and 34 degrees Celsius over the next 24 hours. Fairly strong winds are also in store over the northwestern and north central provinces. Wet weather can be expected in Vaunia as well as Puttlam, while thunder showers are forecasted in Batticaloa. Moving further south, the same can be expected in the cities of Colombo, Galle, Mathura as well as Kandy. Now let's take a look at your city-by-city forecast.
And before we go, we'd like to take you to Germany, where thousands of people took to the streets for the annual Oktoberfest costume parade in Munich held on Sunday. The parade is a chance for Bavarians to show off their best traditional costumes. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.